right, folks, we are back here on WLTH 1370 AM. We're still talking about the president, Joe Biden's first 100 days in office. Now, a big part of his first 100 days has been the economic recovery. He put forth during his before his inauguration a massive relief program, asking Congress to approve of $1.9 trillion to funding to provide Americans with another round of stimulus checks. Now, there was a lot of controversy surrounding this because, well, let's just call it what it is. The spade is spade. They lied. They said they were going to give us $2,000, and instead they gave us $1,400 and said, well, add the $600 that Trump gave you. And so ultimately, Biden and the Democrats have given us less money than Donald Trump did and the Republicans did.
Wow.
Right. Well, remember, Trump gave us technically $1,800 put together. Joe's giving us $1,400. And they're not even talking about another round. But, even though I will say it looks like the economy may be coming around, so they might not have to. But still, a lot of people have lost their homes. A lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people have lost everything that they held dear. And, the Democrats that told us that we had to vote for them in Georgia. You saw John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. They said, if you vote for us, $2,000 checks are right out the door. Yeah. Right out the door immediately. They blatantly just lied.
Yeah. I'm still waiting on my tax return. So
Right.
Oh, well.
I heard that.
Hey.
And Biden has signed several executive actions that are taking aim at Donald Trump's hardline immigration policies, including reversing the former president's travel ban, targeting largely Muslim countries, and fortifying the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. And so now we have this huge issue at the border, and we have the same so-called children in cages that AOC and the Democrats cried about, and everybody told us that we had to be so concerned about. And now it looks even worse if you've seen actual footage. Like, I've seen some horrific footage coming out of those detention centers for children, but now they're no longer calling them children in cages.
Oh.
No, they're calling them, these are just temporary assistant facilities. They're no longer children in cages now, even though they're still technically in cages.
Okay, well, it all depends on whose ox is gored.
Exactly, and that is the point. I mean, I saw Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez completely embarrass herself by trying to reason with why when Donald Trump had the kids in cages, they were kids in cages. But now when Joe Biden has put them in cages, they're not really cages. And now there's a huge backlog of people at the border because since the Democrats spent so much time talking about how horrible and racist Donald Trump was for talking about illegal immigration, now all these people from Guatemala and El Salvador and Honduras are just showing up at the American border like, hey, let us in. Be about what you said you were. You said you were going to accept all of us and our families. So let us in. And so now it's an even worse situation. It's even, the type of pictures and video we're seeing from the border are, we're hearing about. I mean, I just heard a really horrific story the other day about young girls from Guatemala, Honduras, southern Mexico. A lot of these girls, they're finding them with birth control.
Birth control?
Yes. And so they were wondering, why are they finding these girls with birth control? And the reason that they're finding these young girls with birth control is because it is assumed that they will be raped on the way to the United States.
Oh, my.
Yeah. This is what we're talking about here. It is assumed that this is what will happen if these girls are coming here oftentimes unaccompanied. And these are 12, 13, 14-year-old girls. These are young girls, preteens and teenage girls who are being absolutely, and young boys too. People are being kidnapped and children are being trafficked in with drugs and things like that. This is a complete mess, but obviously the corporate media are not going to hold Joe Biden accountable for it. They're not going to hold the Democrats accountable for it, even though they did with Donald Trump, because, again, the corporate media has their horse in the fight. And like I said, I don't vote for either one of these parties, They're all corrupt to me. I'm a populist. I vote third party in presidential elections. I only vote for, I may vote for a Democrat in local elections and in the Senate and House races or whatever, and governor's mansions. But when it comes for president, I don't support any of these people. But it's pretty obvious that the way that the media is handling this immigration thing shows you that they're pretty deep in the tank, who they're in the tank for and have been in the tank for. But when it comes to black folks, I think that's really what we wanted to know. When it comes to black people, how is Joe Biden doing? And well, he did promise on the campaign trail that he was going to create a U.S. Police Oversight Commission, concluding, and they, after the death of George Floyd and whatnot. But this week, they have completely reversed course on that. Another story the mainstream corporate media didn't cover. Susan Rice, who is Biden's domestic policy advisor, and a ghoulish human being responsible for many deaths during the Obama administration, said in a statement that the administration believed that a commission would not be the most effective way to deliver on our top priority in the area of policing. They said that the priority is a bill that passed the House of Representatives in March, banning officers from using chokeholds and entering suspects' homes without knocking. That bill, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, they are the act that they say that they are focusing on is unlikely to pass because it is unlikely to win the 60 Senate votes that it needs. So the Republicans oppose provisions in the bill eroding qualified immunity protections. So basically, we get nothing because Joe Biden has already said that he doesn't want to do anything to the filibuster. He's already said that he would prefer not to do anything to change anything too much because cultural norms. And this is why I'm always on every week, probably since I've been here at this radio station for 5 years now, I think. I've talked about this. This is the danger in letting these people string black people along for decade after decade. They string us along. This is exactly how they do it. They say, oh my God, the Republicans are stopping us from doing this. And so we can't do what we promised you that we would do. And then you say, okay, well then shouldn't you be fighting to get rid of the filibuster that would allow you to do what you promised to us? And they go, well, it's just not the norm. I'm sorry. The Senate parliamentarian, she doesn't even have any power. They could easily fire her or just ignore her. And, well, we can't give you $50 minimum wage. We can't give you health care. We can't pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We can't do anything because, it's the Republicans. And then when you do get even when, the Democrats can pass something with 51 votes, they go, Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, the corporate the Democrats in West Virginia and Arizona, they are basically Republicans. So we can't do what we promised you. It's a good scam, Ralph. It's a good scam. I wish I could get away with a scam like that.
Well, it's sort of like the whole redistricting thing.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody would like to change the system until they benefit from the system.
Yep.
And then they're content to leave things as they are. The reality is the filibuster, it has its purpose, I guess, but they're not gonna get rid of it because the day may come when they need it.
Yep.
And so they'd like to have it around. A bigger issue to me is I've always looked at policing issue as it's one ultimately local issue. It's a local political issue. And it focuses on the mayor. The mayor is responsible for how his city is run. And if you're in a situation where the police force is treating you, local residents, like you're an occupied force, then you need to go and address who's sitting at City Hall, whether it's to talk to him and say, look, we don't like what's going on. You need to fix this. Or go to the polls, cast your votes, tell the person that wants the job that this is what we want if you're going to get our votes. Here in Gary for so long, the local politics has been more of a popularity contest.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
who you're connected to contest.
Oh yeah.
I honestly can't remember, how long in local political life did we actually say that, significant issues were important, until our back was against the wall and it was sink or swim, sit near the bush. Now we're worried about whether the local government does things like fix the potholes or keeps the street lights working or whether we have enough police cars. But for years it was, do I like him? Do I know him? Is he related to me?
Did they go to Roosevelt with me?
Yeah. So I'm glad that there's been a change. I'm glad that people are moving to Gary who don't have an organic connection to the past, who just look at city government, as this is a job and this is what that job is supposed to do. And if I'm going to live here and invest money here or raise a family here, I expect the city to do its part. I'm glad that there are more people who think that way. But when it comes to policing, again, it's primarily local. If you want Washington, D.C. to solve your police problems, it's going to take a while.
I agree, but there are things that there are universal standards we can have.
Yeah.
There are definitely some universal standards we can have, and Washington, D.C. can do something about that in terms of the no-knock warrants.
Yeah, there are constitutional issues that maybe a long time ago, no-knock warrants should have been addressed as a constitutional issue. Maybe some of those, what did they call them, where they basically seize your assets before you've even gone to trial? Maybe that sort of stuff should have been challenged on a constitutional basis a long time ago. It's nice that they're finally getting around to that sort of stuff, forfeiture laws and things like that. But that we don't need a new constitutional amendment to convince us that police have a job and it's fairly limited and they should be restricted to that job. Those laws are pretty much already in place. For example, Ferguson. I don't know why a community that is mostly black for so long suffered the stuff they suffered. Why did they allow the local political leadership to do the stuff they did for so long when they were the majority?
Stuff goes on here in Gary.
They were the majority.
We're the majority here.
Yeah. So we put up with stuff and then get mad about stuff that we're putting up with.
Yeah, well, and this is exactly what's wrong with America, I think, to a large extent, when you have whole swaths of the population who are just completely disenfranchised with politics, who just don't believe their vote matters, who don't believe that any of it matters, that, the wealthy elites are going to win no matter what. And, it's one of the reasons that so many people are disheartened seeing what happened in the Democratic primary once again, where the establishment Democrats did what they had to do to snuff out Bernie's movement and to chop down Andrew Yang, which they're trying to do. He's running for mayor of New York now, and they've actually the media and the corporate Dems have come up with Andrew Yang is anti-Asian. That's the thing. That's what they're running against, and they actually found about 400 Asians to come out against Andrew Yang. Hold on, caller, I'll get to you. And same thing with Tulsi. They turned this woman who was a U.S. veteran who spent her entire life defending her country into a Russian asset. And so young people see people that actually connect to them, like Bernie Sanders or Andrew Yang or Tulsi Gabbard, get completely slandered by the status quo, by the media, by the corporate Dems. And they say, well, forget this. I'm not even going to vote anymore, unfortunately. And then you have generations of people who grow up like that. Hello, caller. What's up, caller?
Yes, good evening.
Hey,
Good evening.
Doc.
Yes, I'm all ears, always listening to you. And, seeing and hearing what you're saying because you're looking for solutions.
Yes, yes.
Number one, in my mind, the question that you're asking is because the frequency and the volume wasn't there to be addressed. You're asking like, why haven't they done this here and there and there? Because the frequency wasn't there, the volume wasn't there. Yes, you would have it here now and again, and the conscious level hadn't been raised. These are the answers to all of the questions that seem like, I mean, you should say it yourself. But when things are well thought out, it let you know the volume and the frequency and the level, conscious level wasn't there. I mean, we have our body cams now, and that's another thing that brings a whole level of awareness. So when you act like it's something hard to figure out, just simple thinking will fix this for you. We have body cam, we have phones, the
We do.
frequency that, I mean, of shooting on the highways and babies getting shot uh, wasn't there then. But now it can be addressed. You can tweak or look into these things. Whatever the matters that you have with policing, uh, they're trying to put everything together like body cams so that they can be held accountable and punished if they don't have these things. So the answer is we're dealing with the unknown. We're dealing with the first time ever.
Mm.
So the question is, give everybody a chance. Don't act like, oh, they're dumb because they haven't figured it out a long time ago. The
Mm.
things that are happening now didn't happen a long time ago.
All right.
So give yourself a break and give everybody else a break
All right. Now,
because the things that we have now that's going on never happened on a frequency that it has. That's like trying to say, well, why didn't they already have some set up for the coronavirus? Because it was never there. We never encountered it in the numbers. When the numbers get there and everybody's got to come to the table and put their heads together. So when you do ask questions, uh, leave enough room for the fact that these are first time encounters with the numbers on every imaginable level, on the cell phone level, on the body cam level, and the behavior of the citizens of America is first time ever.
right, right, right.
So, I mean, we have people doing things, it, they were doing it all along, but they're doing it in the numbers now that they're drawing attention to themselves. Now we can come to the table. It's not that nobody was dumb at first. It's just that we hadn't encountered the numbers now. Now you have to come to the table.
All
Now
right.
you have to
All
do it.
right. Thank you, Doc.
I hope I said something
Yes, yes.
valuable.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm. I think he is right to an extent where a lot of this stuff is just new. You know, I remember being a really small kid when the Rodney King beating happened, and that was amazing because the guy who recorded it happened to be a guy whose apartment was across the street, and he had a camera in his apartment, and he just filmed it out of his camera. Now we can just walk. You know, we can walk. Pretty much, we're walking around with cameras. All of us are, and so that definitely does mean that we have to adjust somewhat to this world. I agree with Doc on that sense, and we are used to talking about things in a certain way that probably predate the cell phone cameras, and but that's because that's what we addressed last week, Rev, when we talked about black people needing to be adept and able to change up our rhetoric. We just can't
Yes.
say police bad, protest riot, police bad, protest riot. At a certain point, we have to be solutions oriented,
Yeah.
and we got to be able to tell the difference between the Makia Bryant shooting and like when Amadou Diallo got shot 41
Right.
times for trying to get his wallet when they told him to get his wallet.
Right. You know, it reminds me, I had a conversation with somebody earlier today, and I said, you know, I likened it to this sort of situation. Let's say that there was a community that at one time, this one particular neighborhood, the local administration just flat out refused to provide services for them. And it did this for decades. And over time, the city government grew accustomed to not providing services to that part of the community. And so they didn't even budget for it anymore. And then one day that community, they wake up because for decades they just tolerated it because they figured they'd have no choice. And then one day they say, you know what, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. And they start making moves, even to the point of getting one of their own elected as mayor, and maybe one or two of their own elected on the local council. So now things have changed in terms of what the government will do, but then they suddenly discover that all that neglect has made the situation so bad.
Yeah.
And the mechanisms of government have adapted certain ways so that now they don't have the resources to fix it. So there is the one thing that is racism now. There is the other thing that is structural, embedded racist impact that you still feel the impact now. And so the first thing you can do something about, you can change that quickly. All you do is remove people that are doing racist things. You get them, you take away their ability to impose their racist views on other people. You find out a cop is a racist cop, you fire him. You can fix that sort of thing.
Yes, you can.
But what you can't do quickly is fix, for example, when they've got, remember the laws that made crack cocaine more severe than powder
100
cocaine.
to 1. 100 to 1.
Yeah, things like that take more time to change. And those things can exist even though the current people in the people in authority might not even have that hostility anymore. It's just that it's been there, nobody's addressed it, nobody's even looked at it, and so you have to root that stuff out. That takes time. But I think things like that can be rooted out, I'm not going to say more easily, but there's room for agreement on those things. The people that are, for example, in government, in the state of Indiana, things that might have enabled things to be done to Gary back in the 60s and 70s, well, maybe the people that are in Indianapolis now wouldn't even be thinking that way now.
Oh, well, I mean, some of them are still. We just almost had like a brawl in the house downstate what was this, about a month ago?
Yeah.
2 months ago, because there was a lot of racial tensions going on down there.
What was it about?
Well, Vernon Smith, I remember Vernon Smith had a confrontation with one of the and any of the callers can remember exactly what happened. Please let us know. 219-885-1371. That number again is 219-885-1371. Always remember the one. Okay. I know a lot of people dial 70 because it's 1370, but it's really 1371. But Vernon Smith actually got into it with one of our other state representatives because I believe the black delegation in the House was being shouted down or being booed or something on that level while they were trying to talk about. They were trying to talk about, I believe, exactly this, racism. They were trying to talk about racism, and they ended up being feeling like they were being disrespected by the white delegate, a lot of the white people, Republicans, who were not respecting them, and actually him and one of these politicians actually had a confrontation in the bathroom.
Okay. now see, that's the racist person issue thing.
Yeah.
But here's now on the bigger side. Now I've seen on C-SPAN, I don't know if they still do this or not, but they used to show Parliament, British House of Commons.
Oh yeah.
And boy, them folks get really raucous.
Yeah, they get it.
We don't do that here in America.
Not like that.
So apparently there are rules against that kind of behavior in the legislature already. Now I don't know, whether or not, Representative Hatcher and Representative Smith couldn't appeal to the parliamentarian that, hey, when it's our turn to speak, there's supposed to be respectful silence while we speak until our minutes are used, and then we hand the mic off to the next person. That couldn't have been dealt with that way. But I think from what I've seen at least, and from what I've heard Reagan Hatcher say, a lot of the stuff that we get passed, well, we have to get some sort of cooperation because the only Democrats in our state legislature are the Northwest Indiana delegation and some from Marion County. But, there's not many of them. So anything that gets passed that benefits us in any way, shape, or form is because our representatives crossed the aisle and said, hey, we need this. We'll support you on that if you'll support us on this, and they get that support.
Absolutely. And before we got to go to a break. Before we go to a break, we're going to talk about the most important issue that Joe Biden has addressed. He has found the single most important issue that is befalling the black community. It ain't not having health care. It's not institutional racism and class warfare. It is menthol cigarettes. Yes.
Menthol cigarettes.
Yes. His administration is expected to announce a proposal to ban menthol cigarette. All the people I know who smoke Newports are going to be devastated by this. Now, they said that they are setting up a process within the FDA that could take years, but is being applauded by anti-smoking and civil rights groups that have pressured the federal government to make the moves because they say that tobacco industry has aggressively targeted black communities when pushing the mint flavored smokes. Now, see, to me, now I am no fan of this at all. And for many years, I used to have a fight with Quad Benna from Black Lives Matter, Northwest Indiana, about rap music. And I always compared to junk food, right? We all know that McDonald's ain't good for you. But McDonald's has a right to be in business.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a right to eat McDonald's, even if it's going to give you high cholesterol. Same thing here with cigarettes. Now, I mean, I know lots of people who smoke. I've had people in my family who died and had heart attacks because they were smokers. Okay, so this affects me, but that was their choice. It is your choice to start smoking cigarettes. And it just, to me, a lot of these civil rights groups make the black community look more stupid and dumb and gullible and just incapable than a lot of the white supremacists do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't smoke. I've been around smokers my whole life. I don't smoke menthol cigarettes. There it is,
Right.
And so to me, like, banning menthol cigarettes, it just seems like, once again, these are the types of things the Democrats do to keep black people hanging on the string. Oh, we have a caller. I have to get to you. Hello, caller.
Yes, once again, I've heard about the menthol, and the only thing that I can see in that, those that have gathered data and they see what's going on, and they see who is affecting the most, and they don't want to be held liable up the road like plant. Now you find out, and if you find out that this is doing more harm to you than it should have, and because maybe blacks are drawn to certain things, and they don't want to be held liable. They're not doing it because they don't want the money. It just take a little thinking to look at this. People know that they're being held liable when something have been targeted, and somebody it caused excessive reaction behavior. So I think it's a beautiful, well thought out, conscious thing, and the data that they collected caused them to think ahead and say, we don't want to be liable for the black man. Well, because we see at such a rate, he's targeted, he's drawn to this more than anybody else, and we don't want to be held, the word is, liable. Now, Dr. Smith, this is what happened, Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith wanted to tell those people about his childhood racism and cram it down their throat. He was up there beating on the thing, on the little platform. He got emotional, and it carried over. I mean, and then them booing because they just didn't want him pushing what he thought would be a trump card, bringing up the racism, thing and his experience with it and use it as a trump card, they booed him. So now they have to go back to the table and maybe tell him, you have to temper what you're doing, and tell the ones that were booing, you have to temper what you were doing, because anything can be overdone. I hope I was helpful.
All right, thank you for your perspective.
Exactly.
I knew it was something about that.
Well, okay. Well, then again, it passed, and things have moved on, and I guess the state legislature got back to doing what it's really there to do: legislate,
right?
Not try to imitate the British House of Commons. Thank goodness for that.
Right. Well, we got to take a break. We got to take our first break of this hour. 35 minutes left. Please give us a call, 219-1370 AM, 219-885-1371. 219-885-1371. And if you don't,
everything is only one.
And if you don't believe me, listen to the bumper. I'll tell you again. You are listening to Scott and the Rev on WLTH 1370 AM. Give us a call, 219-885-1371.